The cast filling up now. We saw Jafar Jackson, Michael's nephew, Jermaine's son. Jermaine credits, Jermaine's kid. He's playing Michael. They already have the parents, Joe and Catherine Jackson, lined up now. What's his face? I know Neil Long's playing Catherine.
Yeah. Coleman Domingo is playing Joseph Jackson.
Correct. Right. Yo, I'm getting excited about this thing, man. I really am.
I'm hesitant about it, not because of the way that Michael may or may not be portrayed. That part I'm not. Well, that part I'm sort of tentative because I always give pause when there are black biopics that are written by white screenwriters. Like there's a black director and a white screenwriter. I'd prefer it be the other way around if it had to be one or the other.
Right.
But we'll see. I think that just my whole thing is just like it has nothing to do with Michael or the way he might or might not be portrayed. It's just that biopics have just become increasingly disappointing over the years.
Which one, for example, you not liked?
Get On Up is one of the biggest missed
James
opportunities. Brown? Yeah, it was a huge.
I think I missed that one actually. What year did that came out?
That was like 2013 or 14.
Yeah, I didn't see that one.
So I saw it. I did a review for Ebony Magazine. It didn't know what it wanted to be. James Brown broke the fourth wall more than halfway, almost 2/3 through the movie. He broke the fourth wall, and it was out of order. It was like a Tarantino movie where it was like, not linear, but then it was linear in other ways. It didn't know how it wanted to be told, and that's what made it so hard to follow, so hard to take seriously. The only saving grace of that film was was Chadwick's interaction as James Brown with Bobby Bird. There are times where Chadwick was being really great as James Brown. And there are other times when Chadwick was being sort of a caricature of James Brown. But the most genuine moments were when he and Bobby Bird were having conversations and interactions, and that was like the saving grace of that movie. But that movie was a big disappointment in terms of biopics. And even though then Bohemian Rhapsody to a lesser degree, because even though I enjoyed the movie overall, because I know Queen as much as I do, there were so many nitpicky moments that I'm like,
you're getting down my alley because I'm
even need to do that. Like the whole thing about We Will Rock You being written in 1980, the whole thing about Fat Bottom Girls being in their first tour when it was 4 years before the song was written. I'm like, that's not even stuff that you should. There's no reason to take those liberties. Those are things that you could just let them be what they are. I understood certain liberties when it came to the inclusion of Paul Printer, the relationship between Freddie and Mary Austin,
right?
The way that the liberties they took when it came to the firing of their manager, Elton, who was Elton John's manager, because that's he wasn't their manager at that time.
Right.
So I understood those aspects of it. And even to a degree of the revelation that Freddie had AIDS before Live Aid, which is not true. Freddie didn't even
Easter 87.
Yeah, he didn't even know he had AIDS at that time. And he didn't tell the group he had AIDS until they were recording The Miracle, which is 1988. But I get it in terms of the storytelling aspect of it, to raising the stakes. But there were just too many moments like that took me out of the movie.
See, that's the thing. You see, everything you just said there is exactly why I like the movie a lot. As it, like, if you're a casual Queen fan, you'll take what it is. Hey, great music, legends, I'm a hardcore Queen fan, so I could pick out little, like everything you just said there. I knew already. Everything you said there about the accuracies of the dates and stuff. Certain songs coming out, and he has short hair when We Will Rock You. No, he had long hair when
he had long hair when that song
1976, 1975.
He didn't have a mustache.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? what was I gonna say? They got mad at Freddie because he was doing a solo album, even though Roger already had 2 solo albums by
Right.
that time.
Right.
I mean, yes, they were mad about his advance, but um, but I'm like, dude, like I get it, but I don't get why they had to go so far, particularly when you have Brian May and Roger Taylor actually there, you know, to tell the real side of the story. And then, of course, the actor that played Roger Taylor just didn't give a shit about trying to get his accent right when everybody else did.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think that the guy that played, even though Rami Malek deserved to win the Oscar,
Yeah.
the guy that played Brian was actually
yes.
better.
Perfect. Yes.
He really was Brian, you know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that part, you know, but you know, biopic those are 2 big examples of why a lot of biopics just haven't resonated with me very well,
And you got Bob Marley
particularly
coming
when
next
it
week too.
comes to
Also,
music.
the Bob Marley one's coming next week.
What's that next week?
The Bob Marley one's about next week.
Oh, I don't even know.
I'm scared to watch it.
I'm very scared to watch it. Particularly, here's the other reason, though, Ernest. It's because documentaries. We're in a golden age of documentaries right now,
mm-hmm.
and the Marley documentary that came out in 2013, or that came out like less than 10 years ago. That's like the definitive Bob Marley documentary, and I'm like, what am I going to learn about Bob that I didn't learn watching that piece, or I wouldn't learn reading Bob's books or Rita Marley's book? You know what I'm saying? So I'm curious to see how that's going to play out. You know, if you're going to do something like that, I would make it into like a limited series. I think that like the New Edition story was a huge exception to the rule. That was a brilliant biographical telling
That
of
was
the story
BET,
of
right?
Edition.
Produced
That was
right?
BET.
Right.
And man, oh man, that's in the top 3 of music biographical miniseries. That's Jackson's American Dream, New Edition story, and The Temptations. Those are the 3 greatest music miniseries, biographical music series I've ever seen. And biopics can stand to learn a lot from those. So, but I just like documentaries more because I learn more.
Yeah.
And everything is truthful. I mean, Thriller 40 is look, let's not talk about Thriller 40. I really
it was too messy.
It
was all over the place.
I can't rightly express the amount of disappointment that I had watching Thriller 40. It was almost like it was purposely done poorly.
I love the footage. That's why that's for me.
Yes. I have to the behind the scenes footage of The Girl Is Mine being recorded.
Yes.
The 4K conversion of the Victory Tour footage that Michael had shot with his camera crew that the estate has been sitting on for God knows how long.
Yeah.
I mean, like I'm watching the documentary, I'm like, holy shit, did Michael put a jib on the stage? Like,
yeah.
It's like, are those tracking shots? Like, how? Like, when they're coming down the steps and they get the close up of the feet, I'm like,
yeah,
oh, John Branca is a whole bastard for letting this sit and collect dust. Like, even though I personally think the Triumph Tour is the best representation of the Jacksons and Michael Jackson as a live performer.
Yeah,
the Victory Tour still, if with that footage, it needs to be brought out.
I might have told you in the past, I'm not a big Victory Tour guy. I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, look,
never have been.
The Victory Tour, like I said, it has its merit, but no, the Triumph Tour blows
that's my
it
shit
out of the water.
That's my shit.
Michael has always, to me, been more comfortable being with his brothers than being a solo act in terms of live on stage. To me,
right.
Tour wise, and the Triumph Tour, you know, it's the last time that they have fully live instruments, like a full live brass section with with minimal synthesizers. The band was really, really kicking and funky and loose. Michael's voice was just, that pre-Thriller voice was amazing.
Peak.
Just amazing. His charisma, his interactions with his brothers, the brothers' interaction with each other, the symmetry and the synergy of their dance routines at that point,
Mhm.
it was an all-time high. And as Michael said in his autobiography, no marginal material on the Triumph tour.
Right.
The Victory tour is basically the Thriller tour
Yeah.
because
Essentially.
there's no songs from Victory that's represented in that tour
None.
at all. I mean, there's 16. There were like 14 songs on the set list, and 8 of them were Michael Jackson solo records.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
got 5. You got 4 or 9. You got 4 songs from Thriller. You got 4 songs from Off the Wall. You got, it's just amazing. And then you have the bathroom break that is Jermaine's portion.
Tell me I'm dreaming.
It's crazy. Michael didn't even come out until it was his turn to sing that song.
Yeah.
But the first 2 songs, he was just backstage. He's like, okay, I'm gonna catch my breath now, while all the other brothers stayed on stage with him. That's how it's like, yeah, this is my tour, especially after I didn't even want to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like he legitimately wanted, he thought that Thriller would run its course. He was ready to
move on,
look at film scripts and start that portion of his career. Because he was very serious about wanting to be a triple threat, being a singer, a dancer, and an actor. He was very serious about that. But circumstances being what they were, I
want the bio catches that stuff. See, this is what I'm scared of. This is why I'm scared of the bio of the Michael bio in some degree. Like on one hand, my main concern is making sure his legacy is preserved. Make sure people who may have questions about Michael Jackson, they look at him in a different light after it. Yeah. So as a fan, that's my number one concern.
Yes.
I told you, and you were with me on the Queen bio that nitpicking things.
Yeah.
And I'm a massive Queen fan, and I pick things out like nothing on that bio.
Yeah.
Michael Jackson's my favorite artist of all time in music. Period. In discussion.
Yeah, me too.
If I was that bad with Queen, how the fuck how bad do you think I'll be with Michael Jackson?
You made a very good point. I didn't even think about that. That's a very good point, Ernest.
Bro, I know Michael Jackson's life top to bottom and then some. Yeah. I have friends that are close to him who lived, so I know things that, like even American Dream, the American Dream story. They got the year wrong when they had a recording Thriller.
Every year was wrong. Yes! They got Michael's birth year wrong. Yes! They got the year they signed to Motown wrong. The year they left Motown was wrong. Yes! Everything was off by a year. And
the family did the fucking show. Some of my language. I'm sorry. The family did the damn.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying?
They get it right.
They obviously. Jermaine was a producer on it. They obviously got Michael's permission to put the songs in, or Sony's permission to use Michael's records and all that stuff. They signed off on it, and they still got it years wrong of all things. So that's something I didn't even think about, Ernest.
And it is nitpicking because like casual fan doesn't really care in the grand scheme. Me, hardcore Michael Jackson fan, I care.
No,
get it right.
Absolutely. Like look, I went to the very first time I went to Las Vegas was a few years ago, right?
Right.
And I was staying at the Stratosphere Hotel and Casino, which is a little bit further from the main strip. There is a Michael Jackson impersonation show that's the main attraction of that particular casino. Mm-hmm. And I went in and watched it, and the whole time I'm like, granted, I did have a few too many frozen banana daiquiris, but that only changed the volume of my voice. I still would have had the same problems. I kept saying oh, that chord change is not right, or you didn't play that note long enough in Dirty Diana and Leave Me Alone. That chord progression's not right. So yeah.
I'm the same way, dude.
I'm gonna be no fun.
I told my wife
no fun being around me.
I told my wife that you can't sit with me the first time because I'm gonna be too I'm gonna be annoying for the same reason. So, but it's coming together. I'm looking forward to it. We'll see how they pull out the cast and all that, and what years they cover. I want to see what years they cover, especially.
That to me is gonna be like the deciding factor of how. Obviously, they're gonna. They hired the actor who's gonna play Michael as a child, so obviously that's gonna be incorporated because it kind of has to be, because Michael you can't really talk about Michael Jackson's life without talking about his childhood, because that's the reason for this whole thing.
Right.
People talk about how famous he was and everything. It's all because of how he was as a child, and that voice from a child. It all starts there. So you kind of can't gloss it over. But I'll be interested to see the angle that they are, because
Yeah.
I see certain biopics like here's another biopic, Ali with Will Smith.
I still gotta see that one too. I
That
haven't seen one yet.
without spoiling too much, even though it is a biopic and people know what happened.
Spoiling.
You can't really spoiler alert a person's real life.
Exactly. Like,
But that particular biopic covered a very specific area of Muhammad Ali's life from 1964 when he beat Sonny Liston to 1974 when he beat George Foreman. And though that 10-year period when he refuses to go to Vietnam, where he loses his title because he's put into exile, when he gets beat by Joe Frazier, all that stuff, converting to Islam. So that's what the portion of that they concentrated on. When I saw Miles Ahead, which is another very disappointing biopic, they focused on like a few day window of Miles Davis's life with flashbacks to him in the 60s during his second quintet days. So that's another movie that was a huge disappointment to me, especially when you have someone like Don Cheadle, who is really the only person that could have adequately played Miles Davis in terms of mainstream actors, and the fact that it didn't turn out so well. And I mean, particularly because Don Cheadle was directing it and it was his directorial debut. But like I said, I don't want to get too much on a tangent, but I'm just like at a point where like I don't know if I can. I totally get that. I don't know what kind of story they're trying to tell. That was one of the reasons why I didn't like the Thriller 40 documentary, because all documentaries tell a story ultimately, no different than telling
the problem with
a
Thriller
narrative
40.
story.
The problem with Thriller 40 was that it was just disorganized.
Yeah, you know what it seemed like? It seemed like it was the first draft, and then they put it out the first draft, as is, without like revising it, because but even I hesitate to say that because of this. Nelson George, who directed the documentary, has been on the record, both in print and in public, that he thinks that there are bad songs on Thriller, particularly Baby Be Mine and PYT. The fact, and it showed in the way that they were not covered so much in the documentary, and there's no analysis of Lady in My Life whatsoever, outside of Maxwell making a passing mention of it at the very beginning. That to me is egregious, especially when you consider the fact that PYT was a top 10 single. PYT was a Grammy nominated song.
And even today is still recognized one of
it's a very popular record. And I think it was also a victim of the fact that Spike Lee did such a great job with Bad 25 and
Off the Wall,
Motown to Off the Wall, and the fact that he actually took time to talk about each song on the record.
Why did Spike Lee do this documentary? I don't understand that.
That is because the estate decided to use Nelson George instead of Spike. Spike was on the record to saying he was ready to complete the trilogy, the Quincy Jones trilogy, and the estate, for one reason or another, just decided to go with Nelson George. Granted, Nelson George's coverage of Michael Jackson is extensive.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, he literally wrote the very first Michael Jackson biographical book.
Correct. I owned it actually years ago. My mom.
He wrote the liner notes of the Ultimate Collection box set.
Right.
He's written. He wrote the Thriller book after Michael died, which is also riddled with mistakes. But I'm the last person to be talking about mistakes in print. Right. So, but my whole thing about that is like, I compare it to something like, it should have been comparable to something like the Beatles Get Back, for instance. The Beatles Get Back told a story. Even though it was a documentary, it told a story. There's this great audio documentary about Thriller called The Genesis of Thriller that Damian Shields did. And that did a great analysis of each song on the album, and it touched upon the stakes, the fact that they had very little time to record it, that they were coming under the gun in terms of trying to hit their deadline,
Mm-hmm.
the fact that that was not mentioned at all in Thriller 40, the fact that Quincy scrapped 4 songs on the original version of Thriller to replace them with PYT, Human Nature, Lady of My Life, and Beat It, and ultimately, and the fact that they had to remix the album in 8 days because the first mastering sounded so bad. Those are things that would have enhanced a story, a narrative that people could have understood. Like, that would enhance people's listening experience to Thriller, to know that it was made under that much pressure.
Yeah.
Not just the pressure of following Off the Wall, but literal pressure of meeting a deadline. So that was a really big fumble. And yes, just the editing and the way that it was in and out of different orders. I just can't begin to understand why anyone in that camp would watch that from beginning to end and think that it would be okay to release it as the final product.
They would.
I mean,
They'd be okay. They'd be okay because we'll watch it because it's Michael Jackson. We're gonna watch it.
Exactly. You made this great point earlier in the podcast. To casual fans, Thriller 40 is amazing, particularly because of that behind the scenes footage. Yeah. But to people like you and me, it's like, dude, it's like you made the documentary bad on purpose. And this is not like to call Nelson George a hack or anything. I don't think he's a hack at all. He was one of my biggest inspirations as a music journalist. But this documentary, it isn't good. You know, it's not. And it's unfortunate because there was so much potential for this to be a great documentary. And to segue back to what you're talking about with the biopic, I pray that the biopic really captures Michael's humanity. That was one of the great things about the MJ the musical.
I still is the fact that my mom saw it. She said it was amazing. She cried.
It's great. It's not just a regular jukebox musical. It really, really, and I tackled this in my review. It really does a great job analyzing the psychological effects that Joe Jackson had on Michael Jackson. That's really the foundation of that musical, is how Joe Jackson influenced his son, good, bad, and ugly. Mm-hmm. And that can't be understated in this documentary, because ultimately, as much as Mike, and this is probably the thing that led Mike to doing certain things, is because he saw Joe when he looked in the mirror, not just in terms of his face, but his soul. He knew that he was probably more like Joe than any of his other brothers in terms of
he carried his name. He carried his name, crying out loud.
Yeah, he carries his name. He's Michael Joe Jackson for a reason.
Right.
You know, that's fate. Yes, Michael, you know, he resented his father. It took a very long time for him to forgive his father for the way that he treated him. But
he did. Yeah.
But he knew his father, but he knew what the bigger picture was. And he bought into it more than any of the other boys. And I think that ultimately is why he rose to being as famous as he was. Danielle Smith, the great writer, when she was in the Bad 25 documentary, she said, the discipline that was instilled in Michael, for good or for bad, from the time he was a baby, is illegal to replicate in today's world. And that's one of the reasons why no one will take his place, because the training regimen that he received can't be replicated. That's why Janet Jackson is waxing 20-year-old female singers at age 57 on tour.
Same thing.
Because of the discipline and the attention to detail that, you know, she was subjected to. You know, people talk about, well, oh, is Taylor Swift the next Michael Jackson? Like, no, the next Michael Jackson was Janet Jackson. So, you know what I'm saying? So if you can't even compete with that, and she's in her late 50s and she's still outperforming people who are half her age,
yeah,
then I don't know what to tell you. But to get off that tangent, the biopic, I'm cautiously optimistic about the biopic. I like the casting a lot
I do.
more than I expected to.
And I think having someone that has a personal connection to Michael and his nephew Jafar does help the humanity aspect you're saying
It
with
does
that.
help the humanity.
Because even before they even announced this, we said I remember seeing Jafar years ago perform with his dad and perform and saying he sounds like Michael, and his mannerisms are very Michaelish too. Also,
Yeah, but that's just a Jackson mannerism. I mean, they
right?
carry a
True,
lot
true.
of that's a lot of Catherine Jackson stuff that a
Right,
lot of them
but
have.
Jafar does have a lot of Michael ticks. I call it.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good way to describe
Right.
that. Michael ticks.
Right.
Yes, and I feel like because they have someone who was that close to Michael playing Michael,
Yeah.
you know that they're not going to be like, oh, I'm not going to play this role if you're going to portray my uncle in this way or
Right.
in that way.
Right.
Because a lot of these writers, like they feel like they have to mention the allegations, or they'll even go further and act like Michael was found guilty, which he was not.
With the court of law.
In whenever they talk about him, and when people talked about MJ the musical, oh, they didn't talk about the allegations, even though the allegations did not come up in the natural timeline of the musical. The musical ends in 1992. The allegations didn't happen until a year and a half later. So, like, what are you talking about? The Thriller 40 documentary. Oh, they don't talk about the allegations. It's like, dude, 1984 is when is when it stops. So, like, what are you talking about?
The people who do that have an agenda.
Well, of
That's
course,
why.
you know, and it's unfortunate. It's like, oh, we have to make sure that we say for the record that, look, no, dude, he was found innocent. You know, if you want to be a Leaving Neverland truther, then
right ahead.
fine, go ahead. Like, here's what I'll say about that, just real quick, because I don't like talking about this. If you're a person that watched Leaving Neverland and you took it at face value, then you wanted to believe that he was guilty.
Yeah.
But if you watch Leaving Neverland and then know everything about what James and Wade, particularly Wade, did that was dishonest and that, you know, contradicts everything he said in the movie, and don't watch things like Square One and don't listen to the testimony of those people, if you still believe, then fine. At least you looked at both sides and still decided for yourself.
For me, it's easy because for me, it's easy. For me, it's even easier for me, and I have a little more of a skin in the game because I have friends of mine in Square One who have been friends for 20-something years who were featured in the documentary that told me these things 22 years ago. Like Josie, the girl, she was on this podcast 2 years ago. I've known her for 23 years. She told me when she was going to school with Jordan Chandler that she was going to school with Jordan Chandler in 2002.
Yeah.
So everything she said is truthful. She told me this in 2002.
Exactly.
The girl Jen, who I'm still close with to this day, on the cell phone, who was subpoenaed in trial as well too, in 2005. Everything she said is factual. When she was with Michael in Miami, when the documentary came out with Martin Bashir, do you know whose house she was staying at when all that was going on? Mine. Because Michael was staying at a hotel nearby where I was living at the time.
Exactly. It's
Florida.
like if you're not going to, you know, put the facts in, or put, like, you know, they say one thing, but it's like James said that he was abused in the train station. I'm like, dude, the train station didn't even exist until
like
years
2-3 years
after
after.
you're gone. So, like, what are you talking about? You know, Wade says, oh, I burned the original Thriller jacket, when you don't have the original Thriller jacket. You know, it's just so many things.
You know what's sad about this, the whole thing too, is that the R. Kelly documentary was actually more fair and balanced than this one.
You literally took the words out of my mouth. I was gonna say that the fact that Surviving R. Kelly was more fair and balanced than Leaving Neverland should tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
The fact that on the second and third season, when he's found guilty and they say, listen, if you still want to listen to R. Kelly, be my guest. We're not going, you shouldn't feel bad about it. A lot of people can't put that away, and that's okay. And the fact that they talked about the fact that he had been abused as a kid and from people in his family and all that other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it was as fair and balanced as it was, even though there's a lot of damning things that is R. Kelly's fault because he documented his own abuse. The fact that that was more fair and balanced is insane. I mean, like I said, Leaving Neverland was a hit job. It really was, and when I went into it, I had to try, and that's the other thing. I went into it with an open mind and thought to myself, okay, as much as I love Michael Jackson, I have to be open to the possibility that maybe what they're saying could be true. And I looked at every side from watching that documentary, watching Square One, understanding all of the court cases that got thrown out because of the inconsistencies of the stories between James and Wade, particularly Wade, the fact that the allegation started when Wade was denied a job choreographing a big Michael Jackson tribute show, the fact that he was shopping a book that no publisher would take, that when he was making these accusations. Mm-hmm. Like I said, if you cannot take those things in consideration, at the very least, regardless of whether or not you think he's innocent or not, then I can't respect it. If you can look at every side and think he's still guilty, then that's fine. But if you don't look at every side and don't think he's guilty, then I have a problem. And that goes the other way around too. Because even though I think he's innocent, there's enough proof that he's innocent. Even though I believe he is innocent, at least I did my due diligence. I also have issues with people who blindly follow that don't do the same due diligence.
Right.
That's one of the reasons why Michael is even still revered now after the fact, is because the fans did their due diligence, and they let people know what the issue was.
Social media has been very kind to him, actually, because you and I close to the same age. I've been a fan of Michael since I was fucking 2 years old. My mom was hardcore, still is to this day.
Yeah.
I went through the years of 93 and 2003 and all that. And you didn't have the pushback because the media controlled the narrative. Whatever MSNBC and Fox News said went. And you just took it for face value, and whether or not you followed the trial or not. But Michael, I'll tell you, man, Michael Jackson fans are, I'm not trying to be biased here, but I see it based on my history of covering sports, covering other things of that nature. His fans are the most dedicated, but yet also the most knowledgeable of any subgenre I've ever covered.
Yeah.
They have memories for fucking years and years, and they remember names. Oh, no. You said this shit about Michael years ago, and this is wrong, and this is wrong.
Oh, yeah.
That has saved his legacy. His fans have saved his legacy, not the media, because you can't say, oh, well, the media gave it a pass. No, there's been no celebrity who's been bullied more and treated like shit more in the history of this of culture that I've ever seen. Michael Jackson.
Absolutely.
So you can't say he got a pass because he got thrown through the fucking ringer. It led him to his death, honestly. Let's be real about
it did. It really did. And the fact that the fans held him up is the reason why his legacy is still intact.
Right.
Because trust me, if people really thought that he did the way people think R. Kelly did it, there's no way there would be a MJ the Musical. There's no way that because that musical is not only consistently selling out for the past 2.5 years, but it's on tour in America. It's going to have a production in Germany. It's going to have a production in London.
Yep.
None of that would be the case if people really believed that he was guilty. If there would not be a Michael Jackson biopic if people really believed that he was guilty. That's the God's honest truth. And don't give me the whole he had money. Harvey Weinstein had way more money than Michael Jackson. Bill Cosby probably had as much money as Michael Jackson.
Yep.
And yet they still were convicted because they actually did do what they did, and a court of law found them to be such. Same thing with R. Kelly. Court of law did not find Michael Jackson to be guilty.
Yeah, because once you put it into actual evidence, once start playing on with kid games here and put it and do adult work. Oh wait a second. Okay, this is all fun and games, but
Yeah,
what the fuck we doing here?
The FBI, who found a way to get Fred Hampton convicted for allegedly stealing an ice cream truck, they could have found something on Michael if they really wanted to. 10 years of investigations, nothing.
Yeah.
And if the FBI can't find anything on you, then I don't know what to tell you.
Exactly. All right, one more thing.